Welcome to the Master Crafter tutorial series. My name is Larry, and today I'm going to show you how to do print then cut without using design space print then cut mechanisms on the Maker 3 or on your machine itself, on the Cricut machine. So what I like to set up is to create a mat with some masking tape on it that allows us to position our 8.5 by 11-inch paper on the 1-inch margins of the mat. So in order to do that, I place masking tape on the 1-inch, right down the center of the 1-inch lines on your mat. So, so here is a mat that that I have prepared. And again, I've taken, I like to use this real thin masking tape, and I put a 1-inch strip right, or whatever strip size the width of the masking tape is, but I put it right in the center of the 1-inch marks, both across the top and down the side. And then I go into design space and I create 2 sets of lines where I'm going to cut that out and then remove the masking tape from the inside portion so that we have a margin to butt up against. You'll notice I put some measurements across the top here. Once you've calibrated your mat, I put these, I write these on here so that I can reuse this over and over without having to recalibrate each time. So let's go back and share the screen again. So the way that you set up your design space to make these cuts is you want to go into your shapes tool and bring in the score tool. So that's this line up here. If you bring that line, that score tool in here, change that from a score to a cut, a basic cut. And then you can position it along the top and I'll duplicate it and create one down here. And then you're going to bring a circle shape onto your onto your canvas. You're going to change it to 0.01. And you're going to position that at 0.25 by 0.25. I'm not going to actually do that. I'm going to delete this because I've already got one. So let's go ahead and delete that. And then once you have these 3 items in your workspace or on your canvas, you can select all 3 and attach them, which I've already done here. Then when you go to make your project, you will see that your lines are on the 1-inch mark, like so. Okay. Let's cancel that. Now to do this the way that I do it, I use Inkscape. If you don't already have Inkscape, you can download it from inkscape.org. It's available for the Windows, Mac, and Linux, and it's free of charge. And if you don't have that yet, I would suggest that you pause the video, go to inkscape.org, download version 1.2, which is the current version, and install that now, and then come back after you've completed that and finish the rest of this tutorial. So now I'm going to take you into Inkscape. I've already set up a project, and I've set this up with 3 different layers so that I can demonstrate 3 different ways of doing this. The first layer I named Print, and that is the layer that you see here in blue. And what I've done is I've created 3 reference points, 3 reference marks in the upper left, upper right, and lower left corner of the workspace. And I've made those each 1/4 of an inch by 1/4 of an inch. And I've done this on a 8.5 by 11 inch document. Now I normally go into my document properties and make sure you do this to set your document size to 8.5 by 11 inches. I usually go in and change the colors because I don't like the white background because it doesn't show up white objects. So I've changed my background. I think you'll find this helpful if you do the same. So the way that we create these reference marks is to select the Create Rectangles and Squares tool. And we just simply draw out a square and then use the Select tool to come up here and change our position on the X, the Y, and our width of 0.25 and our height of 0.25 inches. Once you've done that, you can duplicate it, which you can do that from the Edit menu and select Duplicate. And then you can go in and change the parameters and that will move that duplicated object. So you do that 3 times. You position these, one at 0, 0, one at 0, 8.25, because you have a 8.5 inch paper. And the last one down here is 0, X, and Y is 10.75 inches. That's how you create the reference marks. And we're going to do reference marks on 3 of our layers. So I created 3 layers. I called them Print. And then I called another one Cut with Offset, another one Cut with Bleed. And basically I'm going to duplicate this first layer that I create. I put 4 stars on here. I just get those out of the left side. You can create stars and polygons. And I happen to create all of these in the blue coloring. So once you've set this up, you can then duplicate this layer and duplicate it twice. And then I'll show you how we set up the offsets and the bleed. So assuming that, let's go ahead and turn off the print. So you can turn off these layers by clicking the little eyeball over here, and then we'll turn the eyeball on for the offset. So here we have the same image that we had in our print, but now we have it as with an offset. So if you wanted to create stickers and have an offset around them, this is how you would do it. So just to show you how we would do that, I'm going to create a red star. Oops, I don't want to do that on that layer. I want to select this layer. Now we can create our offset. So the way that we create an offset is we go into the paint bucket. I call it the paint bucket tool. They actually call this fill bounded areas. And up along the top here, when that tool is selected, you want to make sure that you have changed this selection from whatever it is currently to make sure that it's set to alpha. Set your threshold to 5 And if we're going to do an offset, we're going to add 7 pixels, not inches, but 7 pixels. So, well, it doesn't. Come on. Let's try this again. Don't know why I don't want to pick that. Oh, come on. Well, I'll have to use the up arrow on my keyboard to get this to go to pixels. And then you can set your gaps to small gaps. So then when you we'll select the white tool. No, undo that. Now we've got the white tool selected. So when you click on this image, that white background will show up, and you can move that white background to the back by going to object, lower to bottom, and then you have the white background as an offset. And then you would go in and select your tool here and select both of these and make that a group. Okay, so that's how I created the offsets. Okay, there's another way of doing this if we want to do a bleed like we do, like Cricut. If you were doing Print Then Cut in Design Space, they offer the opportunity to do a bleed. So the way that I would do a bleed is I'm gonna go turn this one off, turn this one on. This is my bleed. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm just going to, oh, I don't want to do that. I just wanted to select a star here. So we're going to go down to our tool. And instead of saying that we're going to grow this by 7 pixels, we're going to put a -1 in here. -1 pixel. I want to change my color to white. And then when I click on this, you'll see that the white is shrunk, is smaller than the yellow part of the image. We only want that particular part, though. We do not want the outside layer. So we would go up here into our layers tool, and we would see that this particular path right here is the yellow layer. And since we want bleed, we want to get rid of that. So I'm just going to delete that layer. Okay. And now we have a star with a shrunken image by 1 pixel, so that when we cut it in Design Space, it will cut just inside of our images. And if there's any inaccuracies, this will correct for that. So I'll go ahead and get rid of that. So now you see how we have created the layers. We're going to go select each layer individually. Actually, I'm only going to select the print layer. Let's turn the print layer on and turn these other layers off. Okay. I don't want the bleed. I don't want the offset. I just want print. So what we want to do is select everything that's on this print layer. And we want to go into File, Export. And we want to export this somewhere. I'm just going to put this on my desktop for now. I'll just call this test.png. and it's set as a PNG file here, and we're going to save that file. That is actually the file that we are going to bring into that we're actually going to print. I'm sorry, this is the file we're going to print. So I'll just do a save, say okay. And then we would go into Finder, or in your case on Windows, that'd be Windows Explorer, and go to wherever you saved the document, which I put this on my desktop. And then I would open the file that I saved, which I called test.png. In my case, that opens it in preview. Yours would potentially open it in Windows in a different application. And here's where I would go in and do print. So I do file print. I would change my scale to be 100%. And I would make sure that my document media and quality is set to the highest, photo quality set to the best, and then I would go ahead and print that. Now I've already printed 3 copies of this, so I'm not going to print it again, but I wanted to show you how that is done. Okay. So once you have the 3 copies printed, or I'm sorry, you print that particular copy, you also need to make a PNG file of the 2 other layers. So let's go back into layers, and I need to make a PNG file of this particular cut with offset. So what I would do here is I would select all this. Oh, is that it? Yep, that's it. And then I would go to File, Export. And this one we would put back on our desktop. We would call this offset.png. Okay. Then we go back into the layers panel. Turn that layer off. Turn off this layer as well. And turn on our cut with bleed. Let's see, turn that off. Okay, so now that you've got your bleed images set, we would select these. We go up, select the layer, select everything, and then go to File, Export. And we would change this to bleed.png on our desktop. So now you have 3 different ways to prepare your project. Let's go back into Cricut Design Space. And what we would be doing is we're going to upload, and we would upload each of these 3 different files, which I've already got here. I've got the print tutorial, I have the cut with bleed, and I have the cut with an offset. All we would do is upload those and then add those to our canvas. But I've already got those on the canvas. So the way we prepare our canvas is like we did for preparing our mat. We put a circle, which is 0.01 inches, and we position that at 0.25 on the X, 0.25 on the Y. And then we select whichever of these projects we want to do. So initially, when you're going to calibrate your mat, you're going to select this this tutorial here, the one that is your basic print. And if you've selected that and you've attached that, now you can go select the print tutorial template, and you'll see that it is set at 8.5 by 11 inches. And we've got it on the 1 inch down and 1 inch from the left. We can go and select contours. And I always, because if you don't deselect this bottom contour for the reference mark, Design Space is going to want you to use a 12 by 24 inch mat, because this pushes it to the 12 inch mark. So I deselect that. Because I only want to calibrate, I'm going to start out by calibrating just one star. I can unselect these guys here as well, and the ones across the top. So I only have one star showing. And now because these are now attached and I go to make it, you'll see that our star is down here. This is where it's positioned, and we can go ahead and go to continue. Now the next step, of course, is to pick our paper, and I'm just going to pick copy paper. And now I'm going to switch our screen over here back so that you can see what I'm going to do here. I've already printed 3 copies of the stars. So here's my 3 copies. I'm just going to take 1 copy for now. And hopefully you can see this. Let me get that in a little further. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place the paper up against the left side margin and pushing it forward to make sure that it comes across the top, and then run my finger down here and run it across the top. So now my paper is placed on the mat on the 1 inch marks. Okay. The next step we're going to do is to change out the fine point blade tool, if you have it. If not, you'll just have to do destructive testing. But I have a fine point foil tool that I'm going to use. And I'm going to place my mat so that it is all the way to the left side of the guide. So right up against here as tight as you can get it, all the way up to the rollers. Once that's in place, then I'm going to press the load button on the machine and let it feed the mat in. And now it's asking me to press the go button over here. And because I set my, I can't remember if I did or didn't. Maybe I didn't. We'll see. Okay, so it is going in and recalculating things in Design Space right now. You can't see it. And now it is making a trace around that star. And then it brought the mat out. Now, I'm sure you're probably not going to be able to see it very well, But if you look into the light, I can see that the markings that the tool made is off to the right just a little bit. That's because I set it to 1 inch, and there is, I've already known that my mat, when I calibrated it, it needs to be at 0.96 rather than at the 1 inch mark. So this next little trick I'm going to show you is if you want to do this repeatedly and change the settings, you don't want to unload your mat. And the way that you get around unloading the mat is to unplug the USB cable, which I don't know if you can see it over here, but this is my USB cable. This doesn't work for Bluetooth, only USB cable. And if you unplug the USB cable, you can now go back into Design Space, and I'm going to bring Design Space up here. Now, right now, Design Space is saying unload the material. So let me just show you. Let me get back into Zoom here. And share the screen. So right now it's saying unload the material and say done. I'm going to click the done button because I've got my USB cable disconnected. And now I'm back into my project. And at this point, I'm going to plug the USB cable back in again. But my mat is still where I left it. It's still unloaded in the machine. At this point, we can now go into select our we can either detach this, or we can go select our print template and then go to contour. And we can show all contours. And then we can detach this. Sorry, I want to detach that. And then we can adjust the X and Y positions. Now, typically, this adjustment will be anywhere from 0.01 to say maybe 0.04 or maybe even 0.05. And you'll learn by trial and error here about how much that you need to make the correction. I happen to already know that mine needs to be corrected to 0.096, I'm sorry, 0.96 on the X and 1.02 along the Y, okay? And now I go back here and I select both of these again and attach them. Select this and go into contours. And I am going to deselect all but the second one this time. And then both of these are attached. So we can go to make it. And then we'll go to continue. Notice the mat. We're going to select copy paper. And now it's telling me to press go. So it's not telling me to load the mat. It's just telling me to press go. So stop sharing so you can see that the go button is now flashing. The mat is still where we left it. It's still in position. And now all we have to do is press the go button. Oh, all right. Well, hopefully, yeah, this is not going to, I wanted to put the blade back in place. I don't know if it's going to let me do that. Yes, maybe it will. All right. Blade in. No, no, no. Wasn't quick enough. All right, I'm going to unplug the USB cable again. Go back into Design Space and say done, because I wanted to actually show you how to cut this out. So I'm back in Design Space again. I'm going to plug the USB cable back in again, make the project again, continue, and select copy paper. And the go button is now flashing again. Let's see, where am I at here? Let me get into, okay. So there's your go button. While it thinks it's finalizing. And so there was a reason that I positioned the stars 2 inches or so down on the mat, actually 3 inches on the mat, is so that while the mat is still in place, if I wanted to check this, I could simply raise up the paper and see how well my cut was. And as you can see here, hopefully you can see this. We've got very, 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 very little white space around the outsides. That's because I positioned it with an adjustment to the X and Y positions. And so every time I cut something, it should be pretty accurate. It may lose some accuracy when it gets down here to the bottom, however. This may be because of inaccuracies in how the printer printed it. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the USB cable again. And I'm going to go back into Design Space. Well, let's go ahead and share the screen so that you see what I'm doing. Okay, so we're going to say done here. Okay, so this time I want to select that image that is, so I want to go into the contour. And this time I'm gonna bring this one up and hide this one. And then I'm going to make the project again to show you if we have any inaccuracies due to the printer or whatever. So I'm going to go ahead and do continue. Oh, it's asking me to load the mat, and it switched to Bluetooth. I didn't want it to do that. It switched to Bluetooth. So let's change this back to, let's cancel this. It's going to continue. We want it to go to the USB. Select copy paper. Now the go button is active. Let me switch you back. Stop sharing. There we go. So again, the go button is flashing. The mat is still in position. And now we're going to cut this star down here at the bottom. And we'll see if the accuracy held between the top of the mat to the bottom of the mat. And it did not cut as accurately at the bottom. So now if I lift this up and let me get the just take this star off of here so that you can see that we have white space at the bottom of the star. So it was accurate along the top part of the page, but as it got down here, it got off somewhat. So in order to correct for something like this, this is where bleed comes into play, or offset comes into play. So we're going to go ahead and remove this, the mat, and we're going to put in another copy to show you how bleed works. So again, I'm just going to load my paper up by bringing it along the left side of the masking tape and pushing it forward so that it lines up along the top and along the side. And I'm going to go back into Design Space. You don't need to see how to do this. We're just going to do this again. So this time we're going to load the mat. Again, we're going to press it as far as we can to this side so that it's on this on this border. And we're going to press the load button. We haven't changed anything. Oh, I'm sorry. We did not want to do this. I did not want to do this. Let's cancel this. Let's cancel this. I did want to change something. I'm sorry. My mistake. Let's go back here to we can undo that. I wanted to select the bleed project. So we want the cut with bleed. So I'm going to go up here to attach and I'm going to detach that. And then I'm going to select the cut, the reference tool here, the one that's up in the corner. And then I'm going to select the cut with bleed tutorial. And I want both of these. Well, I guess I got to make it visible, don't I? We'll attach those together, and I don't want to see the basic template. All right. So now we have the circle and the circle and this one. And we're going to attach that. And then we're going to go into contour. I'll select this and go into my contour. I'm going to turn that off, that off, that off, that. So we only have the bottom star selected. And we'll go to make it. And we'll go to continue. And we're doing paper. And now we'll stop sharing so you can see what's going on here. All right, it's asking me to load the mat right now. You can see that's flashing. So again, we're going to put the mat up as far to the left and push it up against the rollers. Press the load button. It's going to go measure the mat. Again, we have the blade fine point blade tool installed. So it should cut out this star down here at the bottom, but it's going to cut it with bleed this time. Okay. And now, look what we have. Because we use bleed, our star is perfect. Okay. All right. Let's get rid of that. And let's put in our last sheet of paper. And let's go share our screen again. All right, we're going to detach. We're going to detach this one. And we're going to hide the cut with bleed. And we're going to do the offset. So this time we want the offset along with our reference circle. We're going to attach that. We're going to select this offset and go into contour. And we'll hide, actually we can just hide all and leave this one selected. Okay, now we go to make it. And this time we're going to cut that same circle or same star, but we're going to cut it with an offset. And let me switch you back. Okay. Doing the same thing over again. Make sure we go to the left side. I probably should have done one of the ones up at the top because there is going to be some discrepancies here. Simply because of the inaccuracies in the printer and this bottom image. So it would be better to do with bleed rather than doing an offset. But we'll show you how to do it nonetheless. Okay, so there is our star with an offset. And of course, there is some inaccuracies. As you can see, that this is not perfect. So I'm going to leave the paper in place. I'm going to disconnect the USB cable. And let's go ahead and share our screen again. All I'm going to do is select this and go to contour. And instead of using this one, I'm gonna do one of these center ones. In fact, I'll do a couple of them. Just turn that one off. And I'll do the top two, just to show you how well that works. I'm gonna go in and continue. Now I want to plug my USB cable back in at this point. Oh, let's switch to Bluetooth. Let's cancel that. Cancel. Oh, wait. It removed my mat. It's my USB cable. It switched. Okay, well, we'll just have to do this again. Copy paper. And we'll stop the share for now. Go back over to here and start over. So this time we're going to do the offset on the upper top part of our sheet of paper where we calibrated it. So it should be quite accurate up at this point. And we're going to do these two stars here. And it's thinking, and it's thinking, and it does a little dance. And it's done. And it looks like it was not perfect. It looks like we're off across the top for some reason. Maybe I did not get the paper in perfectly this time. Kind of looks like I got a little high with it. Yeah, I did. I didn't get it up, butted up against the top of the masking tape. So we're off a little bit. As you can see here, should have been down just a little bit, which was my fault. And then I think everything would have been just fine. So when I put the paper in, I wasn't real careful. So anyhow, that is how you can do print then cut full page stickers. It makes no difference what you put on the page. I use stars just for an example here, but you can use an image of whatever you like, and you can decide whether or not you want to apply a a bleed function where you cut a little bit to the inside of the image, or whether you want to apply an offset around it. And that offset can be whatever color you want it to be.